On This Week in Enterprise Tech, assessing your IT needs can save you billions. Net neutrality is back, and Skyport shows us how to secure Active Directory. Try it on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey.
This is Twit. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 179, recorded March 4th, 2016, Securing Active Directory with Skyport. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Igloo Software. Igloo is an internet you'll actually like. It connects people with the information they need to do their best work. Try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit or sign up for a live demo to see it in action. And by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your house. Right now, get free expedited FedEx shipping when you go to ring.com/enterprise. And by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100+ job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Welcome to Twit. This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I never guide you by myself. I'm joined by my regular cast of cohorts, the characters that I call my friends, starting with Mr. Brian Chee. He's the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii, known as the Geek in Paradise. Cheebert, how are things over in the middle of the Pacific?
Pretty decent. Just trying my very best to get the embedded systems class off the ground and make sure these kids learn how to build science instrumentation.
I am going to hook you up with some contacts I made at Mobile World Congress with the Intel folk. I've got a bunch of Edison and Curie parts coming in, and I got to say, I mean, I think that's going to give the Arduino a run for the money in the beginning development space. So we'll geek out on that.
Yeah, actually, the Galileo can run compiled MATLAB, which is kind of awesome.
Gotta love that. Speaking of awesome, I think that's the word I would use to describe our next co-host. It's Mr. Lou Maresca. He's a lead software developer at Microsoft in their CRM Dynamics group. Lou, it's good to have you back, my friend. Now, last time you were here, we saw Maresca revision 2.0 or something?
3.0.
3.0. That's a 3.0. I guess you're nesting that process right now. So how are you, my friend?
Doing well. Taking a break today from shipping high-speed software and talking a little bit enterprise.
Well, let's do just that. We've got an interesting show for you today. We're bringing in some guests who are going to talk a little bit about their experience at RSA, what they've learned about Active Directory, and how you could protect yourself. But before we do that, let's jump into the blips. This one is all about Microsoft thinking Windows 10 is great for post-breach protection. Now, this past Tuesday, Microsoft announced the early availability of the Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. It's a post-breach enterprise service that can detect threats that have made it past network defenses and will report patterns that might indicate possible advanced persistent threats. The product was developed after Microsoft security researchers determined that of the thousands of reported attacks in 2015, it took more than 200 days on average to detect a breach and 80 days to contain it. The product could drop these numbers dramatically by using Microsoft's Big Data Intelligence Security Graph that searches for anomalies in network behavior. It looks at the state of individual machines and network activity over the course of 6 months, aggregating behaviors to compile a snapshot of normal activity which can then be used to detect when a breach is in progress. It's still an early release, which means that only select early adopters can get it, but Microsoft has found this feature desirable by 90% of the IT managers that it polled. In other words, expected to see it in your enterprise toolbox in the near future.
90% of SSL VPNs are hopelessly insecure. News research conducted by Highbridge Technologies, or HTB, says that out of 10,436 randomly selected publicly available SSL VPN servers, 90% are insecure or outdated. SSL encryption is not only used for secure web browsing over HTTPS, but for other services like VPN, file transferring, email, instant messaging, VoIP. Here are some of the stats. So 77% of tested VPNs were still using the insecure SSL3, and some were actually using SSL v2. 76% were actually had an untrusted SSL cert, which leaves them open for the man-in-the-middle attack. 74% of certs had the insecure SHA-1 signature, and some of them, 5%, actually had the MD5. 41% had an insecure 1024 key length for their RSA cert. 10% actually relied on OpenSSL, which actually is still vulnerable to Heartbleed. So security really is only as good as the amount of effort the companies are willing to put in. And a good model is to what they call assume breach, or shift the focus from one-sided, purely preventative strategy to include more of an emphasis on breach detection, incident response, and effective recovery when breach does or almost inevitably will occur.
Psst. Wonder how long a Nissan Leaf's battery will last with the aircon going full blast? Well, so it seems that anyone that wants to download the Nissan EV Connector app can grab your Leaf's VIN number from your windshield and control the environmental system on a Leaf anywhere in the world. What's scary is that once you have the VIN, the JSON interface for the Nissan portal will return an XML page describing the current conditions of the vehicle without a login. Similarly, you can change the condition of the various pieces simply by using different APIs from the portal. The author actually just enumerated the VIN number and found other Leafs that he could access, all without a password. Thankfully, the entire portal has been taken offline until Nissan is able to fix this very big security hole in their EV Connect system.
Now, there is no doubt that encryption is the lightning rod in the tech world today. Tech giants must now consider not only how strong of encryption they can provide to their customers, but also whether or not that encryption will bite them in the legal bite when the U.S. federal government comes calling. Still, in a story filled with fiery rhetoric, it's nice to see most of the major players pulling together to say, let's figure this all out. All, that is, except Amazon, which has decided it's a lot easier just to remove encryption altogether. Yesterday, Amazon announced the deprecation of full device encryption in Fire OS 5. Users of Amazon Fire devices now must choose to keep their device encryption along with Fire OS 4 or decrypt their devices while upgrading to 5. There was a notable outcry after the announcement, with several wondering if Amazon had sacrificed customer privacy on the altar of law enforcement overreach. But Amazon claims that full device encryption was an enterprise feature, and specifically an enterprise feature that nobody was using. Whatever the case, if you plan on updating your Fire, you may want to reconsider what personal information you keep in the Amazon garden.
Carbon dioxide batteries exhaling can charge your phone. By using the concept of dissolution, researchers were able to break apart carbon dioxide into its base elements, or carbon and oxygen, by using STEP, or the solar thermal electrochemical process. With the carbon, they were able to generate carbon nanotubes, which are flexible, conductive, stable, and stronger than steel. The oxygen byproduct is channeled back to the generator to boost its combustion efficiency. When incorporating carbon nanotubes into lithium-ion batteries, by using them as the positive electrodes or anodes, they were able to give more than 10 times power storage performance. Carbon nanotubes can also be used in other battery types, infusing the nanofibers as positive electrodes in sodium-ion batteries as well. Sodium-ion batteries' current usage is in electrical grids for low-cost, large-scale applications. Infused with carbon nanotubes, batteries showed no sign of fatigue after they were exposed to almost 10 weeks of continuous charging and discharging. Imagine a fossil fuel electrical power plant that could produce zero net carbon dioxide emissions.
Well, how would you like to store 360 terabytes on a disk the size of a quarter, and it would last 13.8 million years without changing? So this was actually one of our predictions from a past year or so ago. And while it's still a laboratory experiment, this demonstration is very clearly a harbinger of things to come soon. I, for one, would love to be able to finally have a reliable and stable way to back up critical experimental data and not have to rob a bank to pay for all of it. A quote from the article: to create the data disk, researchers from the University of Southampton used a process called femtosecond laser writing, which creates small discs of glass using an ultra-fast laser that generates short and intense pulses of light. These pulses can write data in 3 layers of nanostructured dots separated by 5 micrometers. Truly something we've been expecting from George Jetson and company.
Hey, IT directors. How important is it for you to constantly assess your infrastructure needs and dynamically adjust your networking plan? Well, the U.S. federal government just did that, and they saved $2.8 billion in 2015 alone. The Federal Data Center Consolidation Initiative is an attempt to eliminate obsolete, overly redundant, and orphaned infrastructure from the federal budget. The task force is comprised of representatives from 24 federal agencies, and in November 2015, those representatives identified 10,584 data centers that weren't needed for operations. The initiative closed 3,125 of those data centers in 2015 and planned to shutter another 2,078 by the end of 2019. All combined, it's estimated that these efforts will save $8.2 billion through fiscal year 2019. If that's not mind-boggling enough, the Government Accountability Office states that the eventual savings could be significantly higher, as 10 of the 24 agencies have yet to calculate their savings over the reported time. While your data center plan will probably not save your company $10 billion over the next 3 years, at least you might be able to eliminate enough from your budget to afford some of Cheebert's wonderful toys. That does it for the blips. Next up, we're going to be jumping into the bites. And guess what? It's our old friend, net neutrality. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. And I'm going to start by asking you a question. Do you remember when your corporate internet was new, when it was nice, when it was shiny, when you thought it was the greatest thing? It combined the things you wanted from the internet, which was that responsive look and the data that you actually needed to do your job. Well, going on 10 years, that corporate internet is probably not looking so great. It's got a stale interface. It never has the information you want. And let's face it, if it doesn't work on the devices that you use, it's useless, which is why we're so happy to have Igloo as a supporter of the Twiat Riot. Now, Igloo is an internet that you'll actually like. It's a cloud portal that enables you to share files, collaborate on documents, blog updates, coordinate calendars, and manage projects, all from the same attractive and intuitive interface. They leverage the best parts of an intranet, important enterprise-specific data at your fingertips, and what people have come to expect from the internet. Igloo gives your users comments, like buttons, and the ability to add content based on permissions with drag-and-drop widgets and a WYSIWYG editor. Of course, a beautiful and intuitive interface isn't useful if your users can't access it on their mobile devices, and that's why Igloo is built with responsive design that automatically reformats to your phone or your tablet. It's also customizable, and this is important. Whether you're using SharePoint, Salesforce, Active Directory, and soon Dropbox and Box, all of them can live inside the Igloo, branded with your look and feel, so you never feel as if you're jumping off to different services when you're inside your enterprise. Now, how about security? Oh, they've added SSL and 256-bit encryption baked into a variety of access authentication and identity services to ensure that only authorized users have access. They have plans starting as low as $3 per month per user, and unlike other solutions, you get full access to Igloo's entire suite of tools, all for that one low price. Volume pricing is also available, and it's used by government agencies and companies like Hulu, Inventive Health, American Family Insurance. If they trust Igloo, shouldn't you? Sign up now. Try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. And when you sign up through our link, you can get your own Igloo for up to 10 people absolutely free for as long as you want. That's igloosoftware.com/twit. igloosoftware.com/twit. And we thank Igloo Software for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's go ahead and jump into the bite. I know some people don't want to hear about this topic again, but it's back in the news, and it's back in a big way. Cheebert, Lou, we got to talk about net neutrality. Now, it's been a year, almost exactly a year, since the FCC made net neutrality the law of the land, and already a group of representatives are fighting to roll back that decision and give telcos free rein to double and triple charge customers for the same bytes while giving preferential treatment at peering interconnects. Now, this particular effort is led by Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who authored the bill, and supported by Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn of Texas, Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Mike Lee of Utah, Rand Paul of Kentucky, Ben Sasse of New England, and Tom Tillis, Tillis of North Carolina. A group of Republicans have introduced the, quote, Restoring Internet Freedom Act. Now, the tagline for the act is preserving the Internet's freedom and benefiting consumers in the 21st century. The legislation uses the three following main arguments. One, that consumers, not the government, should be driving the market. Two, that net neutrality discourages innovation, investment, and destroys the competitive environment. And three, that the FCC shouldn't have taken this step. It should have come from Congress. Let's break this down one by one. Cheebert, consumers, not the government, should be driving the market. Does it pass the smell test for you?
I don't know. You know, it is a topic that's very hard. Now, on one hand, the deregulation of the interlata markets that spawned competition for cell phones and so forth has been amazingly good for the market. In fact, even the telco companies have admitted that it was spectacular. It actually created markets that didn't even exist before. But I do kind of subscribe to the entire concept of laissez-faire. And that is, yeah, I kind of like the consumers driving the market. I think I'm going to stick kind of in the middle because a lot of these vendors were, let's call a spade, cheating and overcharging. So, yeah, I like the fact that the FCC slapped them, and I like the fact that they're saying behave, but I don't like the fact that the FCC had to step in. So I guess I'm not really answering that because I'm down the middle, actually.
No, actually, I think that's a good answer. And I think that's the correct response to it. Because if we remember, the FCC didn't want to step in the first place. They didn't want to invoke Title II, but they came back with that decision from the judge, who actually is going to be taking a look at the second story we're speaking about, who said, look, you've got a built-in mechanism. If you want to actually regulate the telcos, you have to use it. It was the nuclear option, and they took the nuclear option. But like you said, I think most of us agree that markets develop best when you put the consumer in charge, let them vote with their money. And yet both of us, Cheebert, have talked about how the market for broadband isn't quite to that point. There's not enough competition, and there was not enough regulation to encourage competition that a consumer could actually make the choice. It didn't become, I'm going to choose between two different broadband providers. It was either I'm going to have broadband or I'm not going to have broadband. Was that more or less your take?
Yeah, pretty much. I do have kind of one weird spin. All these spectrum auctions kind of actually painted us into a corner. You know, it made things like, you know, WiMAX is gone now, and that frequency range is being absorbed into the Sprint LTE efforts. By making the spectrum so expensive, it prevented smaller companies from joining in and actually providing us with a wireless alternative to broadband. So I think that actually kind of backfired on us, and I'm not sure I like the end result because I kind of did like WiMAX. Yeah,
actually, when it was working, it worked really well for me. And I still have a couple of WiMAX devices that I just can't bear to throw away. Lou, I want to go to you for number two. So the second major point that they were bringing up in that act was that net neutrality discourages innovation, investment, and destroys the competitive environment. I'll start out by saying this is not new. This was actually exactly the tagline that was being used by the industry when they were against the initial setting of the rules. In fact, if you remember, they had the Cable Association brought up that wonderful website that proclaimed to be a grassroots organization, and they specifically said that net neutrality would hurt investment, that no company, once these rules were enacted, would put a dime into the development of infrastructure. They also said that net neutrality would raise taxes, and they also said that net neutrality would ensure that no company would ever want to be involved in broadband. Has that happened in the year since the net neutrality rules have come into play?
You know, to me, I don't think there's really any evidence of that, right? I mean, I don't see this happening anywhere. So I think, I guess they have some interesting arguments on their side, but I don't necessarily see any of this happening, right? So I think, you know, these types of rules blocking companies from favoritizing specific corporations by them paying that blocking that ability, how would that, I mean, I still don't really understand their angle of saying that it's going to hurt innovation in that sense.
Right, right. In fact, we did cover a few stories specifically involving AT&T, because AT&T was one of the most vocal companies when these rules were established, especially during the Spectrum Wars. They were saying, well, with these rules, there's no way that we're going to bid on Spectrum. There's no way that we're going to invest in infrastructure if we're not going to be able to get paid back. And, of course, they've paid several $100 billion for Spectrum over the last year or so. So that was an empty threat. The other thing, and this is a little unknown fact that I love to refer to, you will remember that the telcos were actually under Title II back in the 30s and 40s before they were moved. And the period under which they were under Title II had a incredible, still historic expansion of the network. So obviously that doesn't stop investment. It maybe makes it less profitable for them, but they're still going to want to do it because they still make money hand over fist. As far as innovation is concerned, there were more companies back in the 40s that were involved in this kind of work than there are now. So I'm kind of hoping that the regulation does do what Cheebert and I were hoping it would do, and that is level the playing field. You will remember that along with, in that same week, when they laid down the net neutrality regulations, they also passed a regulation that allowed easier access to poles inside the cities, which made it easier for a competitor like, say, SonicNet to get access to the customers that were previously denied to it. Cheebert, I want to take you to the third one because this one's fun. Actually, both you and Lou should chime in on this. This is something that I've heard as a battle cry, and that the FCC overreached, that it shouldn't have done this step because it should have been an act of Congress. This is such a big, important step in the development of the internet in this country that it shouldn't have been a unilateral decision by a federal commission. Does that pass your smell test?
I actually like what the FCC did. They basically came in and said, hey, we really don't want to use the nuclear option. Please just police yourself. And they kept doing this. And I remember hearing this over a period of several years. And the industry just kept saying, no, we don't like this. We're going to throw lawsuits and so forth. And well, the FCC finally said, okay, you called our bluff, so there. And this is, I'm seeing a lot of historical precedents for this. The guys in the chat room actually came out with a really good one. This is kind of like the gas wars. We would have, regulation is for when the industry doesn't play nice. I consider laws get made because people are either cheating or they're ignoring your fellow man. And so the government steps in and says, hey, come on, play nice. We're going to put a law in place. Unfortunately, those kind of laws almost never go away. And that's the reason why I lament having to do this, because it's never going to go away.
Yeah, yeah. Lou, what about you? I mean, do you think the FCC overreached?
I think they're basically telling the telcos that, hey, we're gonna put out these regulations, and we're for consumers, and we're gonna continue to be for consumers, and by doing that, they might be stretching their reach a little bit, but again, in this sense, they're expressing their how much power they have over the industry, and I think that that's important because then telcos will try less to try to get past them, right? So I think there's a couple different spins on it. So I don't think that they did in that case.
Something that has always puzzled me is because I have heard this before, that, oh, why did the FCC do this? Because that should have been an act of Congress. It should have been an act of Congress. And the funny thing is, it was an act of Congress. It was an act of Congress twice, the 1934 Telecommunications Act and the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Both of those granted the FCC the power to do exactly what they did. In 1934, they were granted the option of Title II. So that's not something that the FCC made up and pulled out of the air. That was a power that was given to it by that Congress. And now you might say, well, that was a long time ago. Well, then what about 1996? In the 1996 Telecommunications Act, they were given, and I quote, a way to promote innovation and competition. It was deliberately vague so that the FCC could evolve that responsibility as technology evolved. So for me, That third argument is really the only new argument. We've heard the other two arguments. The other two arguments prove to be blatantly false. And so it comes down to, did the FCC have the jurisdiction to do this? The funny thing about this is when this act goes through, it's going to be looked at a panel of judges, including one of them who was responsible for the 2014 decision in which he told the FCC, you don't have the right to enact net neutrality legislation against the ISPs unless, and he gave them this option, unless you invoke Title II. So they invoke Title II as he told them to, and now it will be interesting to see what he says as it comes back. Let's do one more bit before we move on, because I do want to get to our guests. But surprise, we've been talking about net neutrality. We talked about AT&T. We even, in passing, mentioned Verizon, but we haven't mentioned Comcast. And yet, yes, they are directly in the crosshairs of net neutrality. There's a case right now with Comcast getting flamed for their zero rating, specifically an organization called Public Knowledge, which is a DC-based nonprofit that advocates for what they call choice in the digital marketplace, is saying that Comcast has tried to evade FCC net neutrality legislation by keeping content inside, delivering internet-delivered content that doesn't actually go over the internet. I know that's confusing. Let's clear that up. Now, you will remember, and we talked about this, when the FCC made net neutrality regulation, they were primarily concerned with the interconnects. They did not want networks using cross-peering agreements to be able to prioritize traffic from better customers. They wanted information to flow freely. Well, Comcast is now offering Stream. It's a service that they have in Xfinity, which allows you to access pretty much all the broadcasters plus HBO if you are a Comcast customer inside your house, which is great. I love choice. Chee and I have talked about this before. The problem is that they're now putting a 300 gigabyte cap on many of their customers, except if you're using Stream. The streaming will not count against your cap. Now remember, it looks like an internet service. It acts like an internet service. It's delivered via TCP/IP, but Comcast insists that since it's only within the boundaries of their network and it never hits those interconnect points, it's exempt from net neutrality legislation. Chee, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, we saw T-Mobile kind of doing this with their zero rating. Why should we get upset with this?
Very bingy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
You know, it's inside T-Mobile's network. It's inside AT&T's network. You need to use the same ruler. You can't have a different set of rules for each vendor. If the ruler fits, I'm sorry.
But Chee, you can have a different ruler, because if you remember when FCC talked about zero rating in the actual regulations that they released, they specifically reserved zero rating. They said it would be considered on a case-by-case basis. So they could. I think you're right in saying we should use the same measure. They could be completely unfair, but I don't think we need to get that far because, I mean, the direct comparison would be to T-Mobile's binge. T-Mobile allows content providers to come into their network at their cost and deliver their content to the customers, whereas Comcast is delivering their content. And I think this is actually going to hit them, because this is a disadvantage of being such a large vertical corporation. Because they own both the means of distribution and the content being distributed, they're going to fall under a different set of rules. Lou, what do you think about that? I mean, it does seem kind of unfair. I mean, people could say, wait a minute, Comcast is going to get punished because they also own the content. But that was one of the things they agreed to when they bought NBC. Shouldn't they be held to a different standard?
You know, for me, I kind of go with Chee. I think that in the same sense as they should be held responsible no matter if it's in their network or not. Think about this: if Comcast gets past this now, if they don't get hit by this now, they might move into other areas, right? They might move into, let's start web hosting things, and let's start VoIP communication. Let's start do this and do that, and they now start to own a good majority of the traffic, and they can do whatever they want with it, right? And I think that's where, if you're a provider like they are and you're not abiding by the same rules as other providers, maybe because you're bigger, it's not going to be fair. So I think, to me, I strongly believe that they should be able to regulate whether it's their content or not.
Now, here's the fun part, because you can look at net neutrality and you can say, I don't think the FCC should act on this according to the regulations they set forth in net neutrality. I think T-Bert might be right. You say, look, if it was okay for T-Mobile, it should be okay for Comcast. But we don't actually have to look at net neutrality, because when Comcast bought NBC Universal, they signed some very specific clauses on what they would and would not do with that integration. Specifically, Section 3, Paragraph 1, which states, and I quote, Comcast shall not discriminate in video programming distribution on the basis of affiliation or non-affiliation of a video programming vendor in the selection, price, terms, or conditions of carriage. So even without going into the net neutrality regulations, you could go to contract law and say, well, you signed this. You told us you wouldn't do this, and now you're doing it. Chee-Bert, is that a loophole to the loophole that was loopholing?
I don't know. This, if AT&T wants to get out of this Comcast wants to get out of this problem, just, add the same thing, let other vendors come into their colos and provide content. That is the bottom line, because Comcast isn't appearing to let other people play, and that's what's making it different from T-Mobile's binge on. To answer your question, yeah, I think our friends at Comcast need to go and read their contract a little more carefully. And I'm sorry, if you signed it and you agreed to the terms, you should comply with the terms.
I don't know, Chee-Bert. I don't think we can blame Comcast. I mean, they obviously don't have any lawyers in the company, so
yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, no. Lou, let me ask you about that. And actually, I love this. I love the fact that Chee-Bert brought this up. It sounds to me as if the test would be if Comcast wants to be compared to T-Mobile and say, look, we're just doing what T-Mobile did. I would love to see Netflix and YouTube say, oh, okay, can we hop into your network? Can we be inside so that we don't have to use this interconnect? Would that be a fair test?
Yeah, I think especially if it's any service that Comcast also offers, if they provide a way for other people who are actually going to conflict or go against their services, then they allow them in their network. Yeah, that would be an interesting way, because that would basically say, hey, yeah, we are willing, we're following our own rules because we're on our own interconnect, but we also are hosting these other services that conflict with our services, so we're okay with that. So that would be interesting. But the thing is, you can't just let a couple in, right? You have to let a lot in, right? You'd have to let a lot in to the point where people feel comfortable with the fact that they weren't just trying to prove something, right? So I think it would be an interesting tactic, but it would be interesting to see if they allow it.
We have to end. We have to move on. But I do want to leave us with something that we've just developed in the private chat. Chee-Bert, I think we're going to use this anytime we talk about net neutrality and zero rating specifically. It's Chee-Bert's rule number 1 of net neutrality. And how would we phrase this, Chee-Bert?
It is basically, if you want to say you're really and truly neutral, streaming porn.
And show title. Okay. That's just put the porn away. And when we come back, we're going to be bringing in the guys, the gentlemen. In fact, hey, Brian, you want to go to the wide shot so you can see? These two folks have been sitting here listening to us banter on for the last half hour. This is Doug Gourlay and Dan Backman from Skyport, who are going to be giving us a report from RSA. You're going to hear some of the goodness that was released at the show. Plus, they're going to tell you how to protect your Active Directory. If you are interested at all, you're going to want to stay tabbed for the next segment of This Week in Enterprise Tech. But before we go there, you know what I want to do, Brian? I want to show people something that they should have, and it's this. This is the Ring Video Doorbell. Now, you've heard me talk about this on my shows before, not just because they're a sponsor, but because I actually bought one of these for my parents before they became a sponsor. Inside this box, you'll find everything you need to install this in about half an hour. My father, who he's getting on in years, he was able to have this up and running by the time I got back to the house. Oh, you've got the Ring Video Doorbell. You've got all the tools you need, from the drivers and the level and, of course, the USB charging cable. Now, the way that it works is either it gets powered off of the power that's currently going to your doorbell, so you can power it off of house power, or you could charge it via this micro USB port, and it's good for a year. Now, what does it do with the power, you might ask yourself, if I listen to my fevered dreams? Well, it gives you a way to speak to someone. It's like caller ID for your home. It lets you speak to someone who may have walked up to your door and rung the doorbell. You know, it will give you that doorbell sound just like you have on the regular one, but now it initiates a call. It has a high-definition camera along with a speaker and a microphone. So you can have a two-way conversation with the UPS delivery person who may have come to drop off a package, or that friend who dropped by to bring a casserole. And here's the greatest thing. Because it works on your mobile device, you don't even need to be home. Oh, check this out. This is what I've actually got for my family home in Las Vegas. So this is the actual Ring video doorbell that I installed for my parents in Las Vegas. And it allows me to see who might come up to the door. This is important because did you know that over 90% of burglaries happen with people casing the joint? They come, they ring the bell, they see if anyone comes to answer. And if they don't, and if they do it over a couple of days and they realize that this person might be gone every day at noon for a couple of hours, they know that's a good time to hit the house. I can look through all the videos and see the shady characters who might be walking up, and they don't even have to ring the doorbell. If they get within the range of the motion detector, which, by the way, I can set the range that I want it to trigger, I can get a video, a clear video of who they are, at what time they came by. I can even listen in to see if maybe they were doing something suspicious. Like, actually, I don't know who this lady is. And, you know, if she started looking through my windows, then I know I've got a problem. Folks, the Ring video doorbell isn't just a toy. It's not just a gadget. It's not just something that I really, really enjoy. It's something that I bought because, well, I care about my parents and I care about their safety. Folks, why not try the device that both Time Magazine and USA Today named as one of their top 10 gadgets? Go to ring.com/enterprise. That's ring.com/enterprise for free expedited FedEx shipping. Again, that's ring.com/enterprise. With Ring, you're always home. And we thank Ring for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's get to my favorite part of the show. It's when we get to introduce the guest experts. And one of them you've seen before, Mr. Dan Backman. Previously, when you were on here, I think you were still with Juniper. And now you're with Skyport. You are the Director of Technical Marketing at Skyport Systems. And we've got Doug Gourlay, who is the Vice President over at Skyport Systems. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on to This Week in Enterprise Tech.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Now, we got to start with RSA because we didn't get a chance to go out. I had just gotten back from Barcelona and was dead. And we also had to cover the launch festival. Luckily, you were there. What was the look and the feel? What was the word, the buzz at RSA this year?
The most interesting thing about RSA was almost an admission of defeat.
Defeat? Whoa, okay.
As you walk through the show, I tried to look at it from two different points of view. One of which was, what are vendors and what's the community really talking about? And half of it was really, assume breach. What do you do? How do you know where they've been? How do you know what they've gotten to? How do you know it's still good? I mean, that was actually one of the prevailing things going on at the show. And I think the other thing that was interesting is just if you put your mind in the view of an attacker, like what are you up against? Going to a show like RSA, as you sit and wander down the path, you can start to see the actual toolkits that people are deploying, trying to protect every possible surface. And the more you realize that security it's tough. As a security professional, you are fighting asymmetric warfare.
Yeah.
You are really trying to solve a problem that is almost unsolvable. You have to cover every possible surface. And what you find is there's some really amazing tools. I'm a geek. I loved going through there. And part of it is that you just get to see these tools that do amazing things. But the challenge is your problem isn't to play with tools and look at something specific. Your problem is to prevent bad things from happening. And that's really tough. And I think that was probably my first takeaway, was just how hard a problem it is that people are trying to solve.
And look how many companies were building either threat or analytics, right? And all of this focus on finding the adversary after they have broken in. I'm sorry, it's a loser strategy. It's amazing. You're hoping that you can find them before they take your data and walk out. The reality is that we need to be focused on preventing the bad actor from getting in, expanding throughout the enterprise, getting to that critical system, taking that data, and then exfiltrating it. There's a number of places that this can be broken or stopped, but it seems to be that, I think we were making a horrible joke earlier, but it was too many companies are focused on not protecting their assets, but fundamentally protecting their assets.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, we talked about a little bit. We saw the lead up to this. A year and a half ago, 2 years, it was sort of the story was the death of perimeter security, that you just had to assume that the bad guys were inside the walls. Then you had the Sony breach, and the Sony breach really made it, well, just assume that you're currently being breached. And you know, the tagline that we had at DEF CON and Black Hat was, the next big breach is already underway. It's happening right now. It hasn't hit the news yet. And so it doesn't surprise me that, yeah, that feeling of defeat, of sort of, we're just trying to minimize the bleeding now. That's interesting. That's an interesting takeaway from a security conference.
Well, you mentioned Sony, and there was, to me, there was like 3 really seminal breaches that happened in the past couple years. You had the JP Morgan breach, where they did such a thorough job of owning the infrastructure. They were able to put low-level rootkits that were persistent against reboot, persistence potentially against formatting of the hard disk that these systems were on. You had the Target breach. They used the applications, well, the ports and protocols that were authorized for one system to talk to another to laterally expand. No ACL or firewall or microsegmentation strategy could have or would have stopped that. It would have said that my system is supposed to talk to yours using port 443. Let's let it. And then, like you mentioned, Sony. Do you realize they did such a good job erasing their footprints in forensics and breadcrumbs that we had a public debate as to whether this was North Korea or an insider threat that did it? And I still haven't heard a definitive answer.
Yeah, we probably won't.
Probably not.
Probably never will. Dan, I get this, but let's narrow the scope a little bit, because we could spend this entire episode going from booth to booth to booth, and just see what were they selling? What's the ass protection that they're offering? But you're here specifically to talk about one particular exploit that could be happening inside of your enterprise that you might be able to help us with, and we're talking about Active Directory. Run me through it. When you think of an enterprise deployment of Active Directory, what are the points of failure? What are the things that are most likely to be exploited, that are most likely to lead to breach, that most likely are overlooked as vectors?
So if we talk about that, let's actually talk about what the goal of the attacker is.
Okay.
So we mentioned earlier that attacks are currently in progress. It's not just a one-time event. I mean, this is a campaign that's going on, and attackers actually have a progress, a set of steps that they're trying to go through. What they're looking for is leverage. What they're first looking for is a way in, and once they find a way in, whether it's through a third-party system, whether it's through exploiting an email on somebody's laptop, that's not the goal that they have. That's just their first footstep. That's their lily pad. Where are they trying to go? They're trying to go into a place where they can get access to the rest of the network. And they're looking for leverage. And there's a few systems in every organization that actually have more leverage than anything else. And those are the systems that are used to run the rest of the enterprise. If you have access to any one system in the network, where do you want to go? You want to go to that one device that has all the keys to the kingdom, that's authorized to talk to every other system in the organization, and, by the way, is the one that can actually grant you access to go wherever you want to go.
Right. You want the device that could escalate privileges for everything. And
Absolutely.
If you own AD, you own the network.
Absolutely.
Or
So
even a user credential with an AD. As
Precisely.
one of our online folks was commenting, it's not going directly at the AD system. It's going for a credential that AD has written, signed, authorized, and said, you're an enterprise admin.
Yeah, and actually I think that might be the frustrating part for a lot of IT admins, which is they don't necessarily have to own AD. They just have to own a user who has enough privileges in AD to be able to escalate what they need.
Absolutely.
Which, how do you protect against
Well,
that?
you know, why don't we do something interesting? Let's do something that's really, really stupid, but actually probably intriguing at the same time. Then could you pull that URL up? Because it's kind of funny. Just for the sake of this show, while we're here live and probably over the next couple of days, we put a running production forest outside a firewall with no perimeter security whatsoever on the internet.
Oh, yeah, I used to do that for fun. That would be like bringing up a Windows XP machine and putting it in an open IP.
Look, a honeypot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, we figured we could test the thesis here and actually build a software-defined perimeter, trusted hardware, all this fancy stuff. But the reality is, how do you even create a system that is designed to protect those credentials? First off, you have to trust the system. And one of the fundamental problems we've had is that there's no ability, first off, to buy clean source hardware and software in most cases. How do you even know the supply chain secure? Beyond that, how do you know that nobody's rootkitted? How do you prove the software running on your system is yours and nobody else's? Okay. Some of the fundamental challenges today.
Take me through it.
Oh, Dan should do this. He's this.
Well, first, let's take a look at this. So what we've actually done, as Doug mentioned, is something a little crazy. And this is really gets to the point of what you want to be able to protect. So if we pull back, part of the real protection strategy here is compartmentalization. How can you create portions of your network that can actually start to defend themselves and be secure from attack? And to prove that, what we've actually done is, as Doug mentioned, we put a server out there on the internet. It's directly on the internet, no firewall, directly attached to our core hosting provider. And on that, we're hosting a web service. That web service is protected by a system, but there's other applications on there. One of those is this Active Directory forest. And what we've done is provide a way that we can provide this protection encapsulated in a way that's easy to use, where it's easy to know that it was hardened and you got the security policies right every single time. And Active Directory is just one example of the types of systems you want to be able to protect like this. So as we start looking at what we're doing here, let's actually take a closer look at what it really means to protect something like Active Directory. If we're talking about privilege escalation, it means going past just looking at the protocol itself. So, Doug, who really owns your Active Directory server?
Well, I mean, of course, Dan, there's the guy assigned to be the domain admin. You expect this person to be a owner of it. But there's also anyone with physical access to your server has the ability to rapidly become a domain admin. The person who manages the hypervisor, if you're running in a virtualized environment, is a domain admin. The person who administers the backups, this one cracks me up, because when you back up Active Directory, the low-level backup admin who does fancy tape rotation has the ability to look through that and become a domain admin. The person with access to the IPMI ILO out-of-band management network is a domain admin. As we look at each of these, there are discrete, published, well-documented attacks for each one of these that allow somebody to become the overall enterprise admin. My favorite, though, is the very last one. If I can get you to open an email that I want you to open from an admin workstation, or go to the URL and web page I want you to go to from an admin workstation, I have the ability to become a domain admin as well. So when we think about how do we secure this application, yeah, there's good trusted hardware, there's the right perimeters, there's a human element to this. And it's how do we build a security system that keeps the admin from doing the stupid admin trick, the stupid human trick we always do of, maybe I should just RDP in from my desktop because it's easy, because I'm smart. I haven't opened the email from my Nigerian uncle. Therefore, I'm going to go RDP in and open this thing up and just add one user account. It's no big deal. Or let me forget to log in out of my domain admin account and log in to administer that one server that says it's overheating right now. Why is it overheating? Because the bad guy corrupted the log file, put in a, faked the temperature sensor warning so that I could jump right into it and check it out while he's getting ready to dump the lsas.exe file. Right?
Well, so let me jump in here. You've been giving me a lot of nightmare scenarios.
Oh, good. Those are fun.
Those are always fun.
Dan's great at those.
Yeah, when Dan was talking about proper policy, it brings up the question of, well, what's improper policy? You brought up a couple of things, which are, well, are you accounting for people who have physical access to your server? Are you accounting for people who may have escalated privileges inside your system who then get owned? But what would be proper policy to protect you against those circumstances?
So let's actually take a look at a scenario like Active Directory.
Okay.
So there's something that's a little tough about security, and that is what the real answer is. Actual security is like losing weight. You get it from diet and exercise. It's hard to do. And there's no technology that actually solves all of these problems. If we're talking about Active Directory, there was actually a guide published by Microsoft. It was just updated at the end of last year. It's about 300 pages. It's 288 pages, I think, at last count, is actually how you secure your Active Directory. The problem isn't actually in the application or the protocol. It's how you deploy it. How do you guarantee that the system itself is safe? And how do you start to separate privilege in the system? And it's not just about how do you make yourself immune to an attack on a system. It's limiting the scope. This is really the most important thing about trying to make more secure systems, is not to say this one thing will solve my problem. It's being able to say, I know for a fact that I can put something out there. It may or may not be compromised, but I can at least have the confidence that if they crack that system, they're not going to be able to go to the next system. And that's really the methodology for actually protecting something like AD. So one of the things that we're doing is looking at, if AD is the problem, if pass the hash, pass the ticket, privilege escalation is really part of the problem, how do you start to compartmentalize it? How do you start to limit the scope of what an attacker can get access to? And that's really the best way to protect something like Active Directory. And part of what Skyport is doing is providing a way of complying with a large portion of those 288 pages of that hardening guide, establishing and maintaining clean source, and also helping you easily and quickly deploy an Active Directory implementation where you've separated privilege. You can separate things like production domains from core admin domains, so that that golden ticket, that domain admin ticket, is something that can't be exfiltrated. It's something that can't be stolen. And this is really the point of how we start to come to the grips with these systems. We harden the overall environment. We segment it, and we separate privilege. And that's largely a part of what we're bringing to bear.
All right, let's stop with the dancing. I think we've got it. We've got the basic concept. Now show me how this is actually going to work.
So one thing that we'll pull up as Dan goes through this, one of our online users, Specs, made a good comment. Admins like convenience.
Yes.
Same as everyone. We need a concept of a security commandment in here. One that says, an admin, thou shalt not administer the server unless you're on a secure administrative workstation. Try it from your desktop, it will be denied, even with a valid credential. And not just deny the attack, not just deny the RDP session, but let's determine in the process of denying it, was it a valid user with a valid credential coming from what machine? And then saying, let's gather that information so we can create the report. So it's a breach attempt was made. An attempt to create an administrative account in the improper method was done. We have to keep the admins safe from their own human nature and the problems we've always done. So when we break this down and say, what does it really look like? What the URL we put up before was an actual website. That website and that server that it's running on has a production Active Directory domain controller running on it today. Everybody who went to that, what you can actually do is, if you've hit it, you would see a graphical console you could try to pull up. You're probably going to fail on that. I really, really hope you do fail. And if you try to open it, Dan's able from his desktop here to go in and properly administer the server through effectively a jump host that's secured, that is a gold master signature signed image, that we can actually destroy after each session and rebuild, so that if Dan decided to put a keylogger on there, it would not be persistent across reboot. But even better, what we've also gathered is, in that Sony world of trying to identify what really did happen, we've gathered every packet coming in and out, every domain administrative session, every other admin session, every activity that happened in this really fancy chart up here. It's called a Sankey diagram, or it looks like the Mississippi River Delta. You see the compartment or the VM, what direction traffic was sourced from, what service or port it was used, where it went to. But if you get over to the far right of it, you see the best part. Whether it was blocked or allowed, and if it's allowed, which policy was in effect at this moment in time, created by which admin, that allowed the specific traffic to go through. We've correlated across the four major spheres of influence and administration in IT. We have visibility to what the application administrator has done, the systems administrator has done, the network administrator, and the security operations team. We're able to combine that information, so even in a world of mobile workloads, in a world of changing IP addresses or a backup and a restoration somewhere else, keeping a coherent single policy applied, that we don't lose visibility when things move. And those policies applying not just that permit this IP address, but Let's terminate NTLM and upgrade it to Kerberos on a client workload. Let's detect uses of NTLM v1 and v2 where they shouldn't be used from somebody who's previously authenticated with Kerberos properly. Let's detect the attempted use of an administrative credential from an unauthorized source to create a administrative account, or let's enforce the establishment of a one-way trust relationship from a privileged account forest, or a red forest as it's sometimes called, to the regular production forest. This isolates and compartmentalizes the critical accounts, the privilege accounts, and lets us not just put two domain controllers, but two domain controllers, Microsoft Identity Manager Privilege Account Management, update services, deployment toolkit, certificate authority, a secure admin workstation, and the other toolkit necessary, all in a single application group with a common policy framework, and then a hardened, secured whitelist on each and every workload within that. So we can really take the same technologies that have been developed in the Fortune 50 over the last year or two by some of the folks who've really been threatened and had to do appropriate responses to identity management challenges. Let's take that down to, the mid-market, the mid-enterprise, and make it available to everybody in a 1 or 2 box turnkey system.
For me, it looks like the visibility is the first key component here. To actually be able to see, well, what is the activity, and not just a log, but to see, okay, well, where is policy working and where is policy failing here?
Correct.
And actually, for me, the big thing would be, would this be easy enough to understand for a lower level IT person or even an HR person to look at it and say, my admin is doing it wrong. My admin keeps subverting policy and best practices.
My goal is that the admin shouldn't be able to subvert the policy.
Yeah.
In order for instance, to RDP into a workload from a non-authorized workstation, they'd have to change a policy or change one of those commandments. In order to do that, I hope it's set up that it's a 2-man rule or an M of N rule. You need to ensure that you require a conspiracy to change policy at that level.
No, I mean, our audience, I can speak for them, they would never RDP into an administrative terminal, right? Right? Yeah, no, of course they have.
Yeah, they would.
Okay, so Dan, what else does this entail? So I've got the visibility. I've got the ability to look at my policy in real time to see how it's interacting with my traffic. What else can Skyport help me do?
It's really more about proving that you got it right.
Okay.
That's actually why you use Skyport. So we talked earlier about it's not just about letting you know that something bad happens. It's actually about creating a bunch of structure that makes it much harder for bad things to happen. That's actually what we've built this thing to do. We're showing you the Sankey diagrams because this is the proof point. It also looks great on TV.
It
so
does.
we're starting
It really
with
does.
this.
I love visual.
Very good-looking graph there, Dan.
So the reason you see this, though, is when you create a policy, it could actually be something very simple. We can take Active Directory policy and make it as simple as clicking a button. In fact, the way the policy looks, I can zoom in, and in fact, this is the real policy I can go to. For instance, an image here that's actually another Windows server, and I can show you exactly the policies that we built into the system. Lock it down to make sure it only goes to things like Windows Update, and basically helps guarantee clean source. But when you're doing something like Active Directory policy, it's complicated. It's hundreds of lines of firewall config in order to deal with all the protocols. How do you know you got it right? And I think Doug has the key point here. For mid-market enterprise, and any enterprise actually, it's less about making it complex, and it's more about making it simple and being able to verify it and being able to know that it's working. And that's really what we've structured this to do. The purpose of the report has much more to do with proving that your policy is working. What this is actually answering is the question, this AD server that's actually been out on the internet now for over a month and a half, how do we know it hasn't been breached? How do we know it's not doing the wrong thing? That's the purpose of having this. I can actually show you exactly what that policy is allowing and what it's denying.
Right.
And that's really the end goal. And this is why this is a little bit different. The reason you use this is to create the structure and the protection so you can sleep at night. And then the next morning when you come back, you want to know that it's working correctly, and we can easily prove that to you.
You really don't want the analysis of your breach to come from the post-mortem. And I think that's what this is.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, I'm going to bring my co-host back in here because I'm sure they want a shot. They want to have part of this conversation. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. And it's got to be, well, one of my favorite sponsors, ZipRecruiter. And the reason why they're one of my favorites is because they recognize that it's the talent that you bring into a company that's going to determine the success or failure of a company. That man or woman with the next great idea, with the skill set that you need, with the passion for what you do is going to determine if your company is a success or if it falls on the heap of failure. Now, they also understand that you can't just post a job once. It's not just about finding the right skill set. It's finding the right fit. It's finding the person who fits into the culture of your company. And in order to get that person, you need to cast as wide a net as possible. And that's why with ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100+ job sites with a single click and be instantly matched to candidates from over 6 million resumes. Now, just listen to Scott. He's an actual ZipRecruiter client, and he wrote, and I quote, "The recruiting process used to be so painful. Before I'd post to several places, get 1 million resumes, but only a few qualified responses. It was a torture. But with ZipRecruiter, we post once and get qualified candidates in one easy-to-review place. We've hired some of our best employees using ZipRecruiter. Just post once, and within 24 hours, you can watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter has been used by over 400,000 businesses, and you can try it now for free. Getting the right people for your company is so important. Do you really want to leave it up to chance? Now, today, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Twyet. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Twyet. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Cheebert, Lou, you have been listening patiently. I've been watching you in the secondary monitor, kind of gushing over the Sankey diagram. Yes, it is very geekalicious. I want to start with you, Lou. You do deal with this on a daily basis. This is one of the considerations that you have to have as you work at CRM and Dynamics. What is your take? I mean, I take the point that Skyport has, which is you need a way to verify that your policy is actually working. You need a way to visualize that the policy is doing what you think it's doing, and you don't want to have to wait for post-disaster analysis. Is this the way you would do it?
So I think now that we're housed by C&E too, Azure security is one of the top priorities at Microsoft. So I think this is one thing that they push a lot, right? They make sure that you are regulating your identities in a way where your policies are distributed to a small set of users in a way where, and then they might actually go and do some hacking on that to make sure to determining what those policies are, and if they have too much privilege and so on and so forth, and how much can they actually access, and then kind of isolating those things in a way where especially if your content is high business impact. So I think that's a good way of doing it. A slow rollout of that type of work, and just constricting it down to exactly what you need for that user. But in some aspects, like we were saying in the chat room, in some aspects, sometimes admins need to be able to do what they need to do, and even if those types of things, those types of users are hit with these types of attacks, they're open for everything, right? So restriction and consolidation of rule is very important.
Actually, Lou, I want to take that up. That's a very important part of this discussion. And yes, the chat room has been saying this is, look, my admin is my admin, and I have to trust my admin. And sometimes the admin has to do something that doesn't look right in order to do it.
Absolutely.
What would your take be on that?
I saw a couple things hating on the chat room as well, and one of them was along the lines of, what if the admin's breached, right? Lou, I think that might have come from you as well. And what if the admin is breached? Well, where and which account? The admin should have a regular user account in the production forest like everybody else. The admin should also have a privileged account that exists in the privilege account forest that has a one-way trust relationship established with the production forest. In order to create a new administrative account, they must connect in. Now, I don't care if it's SSH, X11, VNC, RDP, or a graphical console, whatever tool makes you feel happy to get into that secure administrative workstation, but the tool should provide an abstraction that does not allow remote code execution to be initiated from the client machine to the secure admin workstation. The compartment that secure admin workstation resides in needs to ensure, one, geofencing. You're only coming from, for instance, the IT department where you're supposed to be. Two, enforcing two-factor or multi-factor authentication. I want to know it's you and you have your cell phone and you receive the text message I just sent you before I allow you into the secure admin workstation. Three, we probably want to record every single action and activity you do on that SAW from a full forensics perspective, whether it's SSH VT100 recording, X11, RDP, VNC, again, choose your poison.
Trust but verify.
Ronald Reagan was smart like that.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're allowed to connect in only to those specific hosts within that environment that that SAW is allowed to connect to. And then when your session's done, we delete the SAW so that you couldn't have loaded something persistent. That secure administrative workstation, guess what it can't do? Because you have an admin credential there that is empowered to create other administrative credentials in that environment, it cannot be authorized to connect to a server in the production forest or a workstation or the internet or open an email. You have to lock that workstation down to do administrative tasks only. Enforced segmentation and separation of roles and responsibilities so that admins do their job with the flexibility they need from wherever they need to be to do it, but are not putting themselves or the corporation in an exposure where a privileged account credential, a pass a ticket attack, somebody could steal that credential and use it on their behalf.
Cheebert, you deal with this on a daily basis, and you know, it's nice to have the ivory tower view of what we should do and how our policy should work. And you bring me back down to earth. You say, okay, well, this is how this actually works. How does this track with you? I mean, you have often been that IT guy. You have often been the administrator who just needs to get it fixed. I love what Dan and Doug are saying. I love the fact that they're laying out a really concrete policy for how things should work in IT. Can it be followed in the real world? In the real non-enterprise 1, 2, 3-man show, small to medium enterprise world?
You know, I'm not sure it could be practical in a small shop like that. But if we're talking about traditional SMB, let's call it, you know, about 100 employees, yeah, I think it'd be very practical. Actually, what I'd like to bring up is listening to all these features. I harken back to when I was a federal IT person, and this would have been amazing. Oh my God, this would have saved me so many hours, so much time, and so many FTEs. Being able to go and provide this kind of auditing. You know, if you're running a classified environment or even for official use only environment, this would be amazing. The ability to do things like NISPOM Chapter 8 or FIPS auditing and compliance testing, this could save you an amazing, amazing amount of time and money. And I am sure hoping you guys are eventually going to go for FIPS certification at the very least.
It's definitely on the very near-term roadmap to start those types of integrations as well as testing.
So you actually brought out something else that's interesting. Part of this, just as a geek, I mean, I've been using this for about a year now since I've been at Skyport. This is really a product that was designed to increase security, and you feel that every time you use it. But what's more interesting about this is this actually makes it easier to do your job. That's actually one of the things I've realized. It's being able to have this instrumentation. How do you solve problems remotely? How do you know why your application isn't working? The ability to have this level of instrumentation is great for proving things like security, but in many cases, the side effect of least privilege and security is applications break. How do you know where they break? Which layers of those 4 or 5 firewalls that your traffic is going through is actually dropping the traffic? Having the ability to look at packets, having the ability to actually get a live feed of what's going on inside the perimeter just makes it quicker and easier to debug problems. And that's actually one of the things I've realized. It's like, this is what happens when this level of security just becomes part of the infrastructure, is uptime gets higher. It's faster, your mean time to resolution gets lower.
Dan, let me ask you, this is a totally loaded softball question, but you showed the cool Sankey diagram. Okay, everybody loves Sankey diagrams. I'm asking so you can put it back up. All right, now that we got the fancy diagram back up on the screen, go us. Is this a point in time thing, or if I came to you or you get the QSR, or somebody comes in and goes, so Dan, we found a file on the internet. It looks like it was created on June 6, 2014 at 1:52 a.m., and it might be our sensitive data. who created the policy that on June 6, 2014, between 1 and 2 a.m. allowed the traffic out over the internet to ftp.badsite.ru? How would you show me that?
You track the lifetime of everything that happens on the system. So you have, for every policy, there's a lifetime. We know who created it, when it was changed. And getting back to Brian's point about compliance, if you track all of the policies and the lifetime and the effect of the policies, now you have this audit trail where you can go back and say, I know that this policy went in on February 9th. I know that it changed on February 10th. I know it was Doug who changed it to allow access to the website we're not going to talk about. But in the end, that's actually the power of having the audit built in, is you can now go back and prove that maybe when that policy was changed, did something bad happen? Did anything match it? These were the types of things that we actually thought about as we built it in.
So Dan, while we record every DNS lookup, every administrative session, every packet gets at least logged and accounted for in that. How do I know what's happening, though? I mean, how do I know what's real within a particular... Okay, so you're blocking something. What did you block?
Well, that's part of keeping track of every piece of state inside the system. But
how do you know what it specifically was, Dan?
Well, you're able to actually see where it tried to go. You can actually look at where...
But what was in it? I don't care about that. What was in the packet? How do I know that?
In that case, if you want to look at more than
was
metadata...
it a data breach? Yeah.
In some cases, you may actually want to look at the packets. So part of the ability here is also add forensics. This is a live view of the web server. If you hit that web server that we showed you before, you'll actually see your packets come through.
Is this part of the suite? So do you have complete packet capture, or are you using a third party?
Here you're showing the packet decode in Wireshark. It could be anything you want, but the point is this is a forensic tool.
Right.
Part of the tooling we've built into this is anything that's running inside, I can give you a live view of the actual traffic. So it's not just what is happening, but if you're investigating a breach, we can set it so that you can take all the packets that were dropped and actually send yourself a copy.
Yeah, there's an integrated hardware-assisted packet capture. What it lets us do is not just drop and count, but drop, count, and capture on a per entitlement basis. We can set up and say everything that misses a policy that therefore is dropped, automatically record. And it doesn't have to be on box. We can VXLAN or GRE encapsulate it and send it to any tool chain you want anywhere across your enterprise.
Well, Lou actually has a question in the private chat. He wanted to know about SSL HTTPS sessions. Are you breaking those so you can capture those, or
this is even better than breaking them to capture them, which of course. But the workload could be running clear text HTTP or even SSL version 2 if you want, God forbid, and will automatically upgrade it to TLS 1.2 with only the strong Cipher suite supported. And we support the automatic upgrading of the cryptographic libraries separate from the upgrading of the hosted workload. So in short, you could take the Windows Server 2003 with the Corba 1.1 framework that only supported SSL v2 that's completely out of compliance and failing every single audit you have today. You can load it onto our platform, and in about 30 seconds or less, we could be upgrading all of the traffic in and out to TLS 1.2 and doing specific recording, like you indicate, of that traffic when and where appropriate within the administrator's assigned rights.
And on that bombshell, gentlemen, I'm afraid we've gone over time. I want to thank you very, very much. This has been a lot of fun. I love seeing tools like this. Folks, I'm afraid you've used up another hour listening to the Best Dang Enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 trees in the Red Forest. I want to thank our guests for coming up to Petaluma, for being with us. Dan, let's start with you. Where can people find you? Where can people read about the work that you do? And where can they find out more about Skyport?
Well, you'd start off by going to skyportsystems.com. We're located right here in Silicon Valley, and we've put together what we think is a really awesome solution. You can actually hear more about it. We actually just had a review published in Network World. It's actually currently on the site. So we can actually get more information directly from a user's point of view of what it's like to use the system.
Dan, always great to have you back. We'll have you back again, hopefully not waiting another, it's been 2 years, I think.
Something like that.
Since the last time you were on.
I have one request if you have him back. Make sure he's still at Skyport.
Okay, yeah. No, he's a journeyman. Yeah, you can't contain the thunder.
He's not a wanderer.
and Doug, I'll give you a last word here. What would you like people to walk away from this show with, knowing about Skyport?
I would say the key thing is that there's a set of workloads we've all been a bit afraid of over the past few years, things that were failing compliance or things that were keys to the castle. There's a solution now that's very similar to some of the architectures we've seen built and survive in the open internet. Xboxes are a good example. There's 20 million on the internet, yet the Xbox Ones have not been compromised, and they have cameras facing your living room. We've taken those types of architectural principles, signature sign software, BIOS, hardware, application perimeters, and full forensic suites, and brought it together into a compelling solution, targeting a narrow set of applications that we can make a significant improvement to their security posture. I think it's becoming necessary technology in today's environment and threat landscape.
Fantastic. Doug, again, thank you very much. Doug, Dan, again from Skyport Systems. That is Doug Gourlay. He is the Vice President of Skyport Systems, and Dan Backman, who is the Director of Technical Marketing. And what was the title you wanted? The guy? The dude?
Dan the Man.
Dan the Man?
Something like that.
The other one.
DFB.
The DFB from Skyport Systems. Also want to thank my co-hosts. I could not do this show without them. Let's start with Lou Maresca. Lou, again, I don't know how you're quite so perky, happy, and well-rested with a new baby, but I'm going to chalk it up to drugs and Xbox. Yes?
Lots and lots of sleep after the fact. I switched around with my wife, so we're doing well, though.
Fantastic. And where can people find you and your work?
So you can always find me, of course, on Twitter at LouMM. And, of course, all my work I do at Microsoft is found at crm.dynamics.com.
Lou Maresca, we will see him again. He is one of the regular co-hosts in our co-host rotation for This Week in Enterprise Tech. Of course, well, a man who I knew way before we started doing This Week in Enterprise Tech. He's been my technical guru, Mr. Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii. Cheebert, you do a lot of things that are not just enterprise. Where can people find those lot of things?
Well, my Twitter handle is ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. One of the things that I've been talking about online is actually a new Kickstarter campaign called Sweep. It is the first 360-degree scanning LiDAR I have ever seen under $1,000. And it's nice and light. It's a Kickstarter. I got in on the 350, 360 something. Still absolutely spectacular, and it's light enough that we can use it on drone or on a rover or what have you. I ordered one. I want one. I want one bad. I'm actually trying to go and get a grant to go and buy a 10-pack.
Like I said, if you save $10 billion for your company, you might be able to buy some of Cheebert's toys. Cheebert, thank you very much. Again, always a pleasure. And folks, thanks to you, the person who drops by every week to watch This Week in Enterprise Tech. If we didn't have an audience, we wouldn't have a show. And we want to make sure that you can get all the episodes that you want. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet. There you'll find our full catalog of episodes. You'll see all of our show notes. You'll see who we've had on the show and what topics we've covered. It's well, it's our little gift to you. You can also subscribe. It's the best way to support the show. If you like what we do, if you like the content that we have, if you want to see more This Week in Enterprise Tech, make sure to use one of our feeds so you can get the version of your choice, audio, video, high-definition video, into your device of choice. We also want to make sure that you can follow me on Twitter. That's at PadreSJ. That's at PadreSJ. You'll find me posting not just about This Week in Enterprise Tech, but the other shows that I do on the Twit TV network. That includes Pomeranians doing Trust Falls, and me at Twit Live Specials out of the country, or me doing Know-How with Brian Burnett. Thanks to Lisa and Leo for letting us do this show on this network. Of course, to Carson, my super producer, and to our technical director, Mr. Brian Cranky Hippo Burnett. Brian, you know, I've heard from people who I trust that you work here.
You know, it's funny you say that because you just mentioned the show that we work on.
I don't remember that.
It's called Know-How.
Yeah, I
Know-How.
No.
It's for DIYers. You know, we build stuff, Raspberry Pi projects.
Not ringing a bell. Sorry. No.
Well, you can follow me at cranky_hippo. There.
Folks, thank you very much. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, just reminding you that if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.